Chapter 18. "Dad! Dad!" Daniel shouted in the middle of the night. Waking up abruptly, he then realised where he was, in Billy's storeroom. He sat up and went to the restaurant's washroom to splash some water on his face. When he raised his head to look at his reflection in the mirror, he saw Damien looking at him. Daniel turned around and shook his head. "Sorry, I didn't realise you were here." He stopped and frowned. "Why are you here anyway?" "I'm just checking on you, son. I gather you had a bad dream. I heard you scream. What did you see?" Leaning against a sink, Daniel planted his hands on either side of him as if trying to support his weight. "I saw Dad in a hospital with Gustavo, and I don't know why, but Gustavo didn't want him to come closer." "Why was that?" "Your father is travelling in another dimension at the moment. He is trying to come and join you in 2007, yet in the meantime he has to renew the events that marked his life, such as your birth." "You mean that hospital room I saw was the maternity ward where I was born?" "Yes, it was, and Gustavo was there to prevent your dad from coming closer to you and your mother. If he had stepped over that threshold, you would be together, yes, but you would have to relive your lives and wouldn't be able to return to 2013 for another 20 years. "But at least we could have been together," Daniel remarked, visibly dismayed. "Yes, you would, but in 7 years from that date, your dad would have to relive his skiing accident, his loss of fortune, and I know he doesn't want to do that." "So he's travelling with Gustavo, is he?" Daniel asked. "Yes, he is. Chippewa, the dream maker, as you know, is accompanying them as well. And if you keep up your end of the bargain, next year you'll be able to rejoin your family." "Lakita said that destiny will find me in Davy, is that right?" Damien smiled. "Oh, you've met our little fellow, did you?" "Yes, he's keeping company to Billy. He's a bit odd, but he's helping." "Of course," Damien said somewhat evasively. "But to answer your question, Lakita was partly correct, yes. Once your family would have left Pennsylvania to move back to Florida, it will be Damienos' task to steer Destiny's course to Fort Lauderdale. From there, Damienos will see to it that your family gets home to Davy." "What about Dad? Will he be with them by then?" Daniel asked, since he had noted that Damien had talked about his family joining him but didn't mention his dad. "At this point, I am not personally aware of what will happen to your dad in the interim." "It is in God's hands, Daniel. I only told you what I know." "Thank you for that, Damien." Daniel fixed his gaze on the angel's face. "Will you give my mum a message, please?" "Of course, son. What is it?" "Please tell her that I love her and I miss her, okay?" "I'll make sure to do that, son." Damien paused and smiled. "How about you go back to bed now, eh?" Daniel nodded. "Thanks, I will," he said as he walked out of the bathroom. A while farther into their journey, Malou wanted to stop. She had a hard time coping with the memories and images that were unravelling in front of her eyes. "There's too many, Damienos," she shouted suddenly. "I can't take it. Can we stop for a moment?" "As you wish, my dear," Damienos replied. And as soon as the words were out of his mouth, the swirling fog around them stopped. To Malou, Stefano and Gabby's surprise, they had reached Pennsylvania and stood in front of their family home in Bethlehem. "Oh my goodness, I didn't realise we had covered so much ground. So much time, I mean," Malou said, looking around her and then up at the house. "Can we go in now?" "No, Malou, not yet, unfortunately," Damienos replied. "Why is that?" Stefano demanded. "That's because there is another event that needs to take place before the three of you can make your way up that hill." "It's my birth, isn't it?" Gabby piped up. "I've got to be born before we can go in. Together, that is, right?" "Yes, Gabby," Damienos answered, looking kindly at her. "Besides which, your dad has to reach the house before you do." "Could you explain why we have to wait for him?" "He's probably been delayed a little while he's reliving or witnessing some of the experiences of his life before your family moved here." "And how long is that going to take?" Gabby was showing signs of impatience once again. "All in God's time, my dear. That's the best answer I can offer you at this point." "Actually, it won't be long now until you can go into your house," Damien said from behind the three of them. Damienos looked at the angel in obvious surprise. Malou and her children turned around. She fixed her gaze on the angel and cracked a smile. "Nice to see you again, Damien. But if what you say is true, should I prepare myself to witness the birth of my daughter very soon then?" "Absolutely, my dear. But before that happens, I suggest you go to a motel or a place where you can rest for a while." Damien returned his attention to Damienos. "Salangi is waiting for you at a motel downtown." "Okay then," Malou said. "Let's get somewhere I could lie down. I'm done for today." "Before you go, though," Damien said to her, "I have just come from a little chat with Daniel." Malou's face lit up. "You found him? Where is he? Can we go to him?" "Yes and no, Malou," Damien replied. "God allowed me to see him and speak to him. He's well and he sends a message." "What's the message?" Gabby interrupted. "He sends you his love and he misses you." "Is that it?" Stefano asked, obviously thinking his brother would have told them where he was, while he had the opportunity to do so. "Yes, Stefano, that's it. But I assure you he's fine and will be waiting for you in 2007 in Davy." "You mean he's already back in Davy? That's incredible," Malou exclaimed. "How could he have jumped that far in time just by going swimming?" "That's because he didn't jump, as you say, Malou," Damien answered. "He simply landed in the same place but many years ahead of you." "But we were never in Davy, not yet anyway," Stefano objected. "How can he have landed there if you say he's landed in the same place?" "I'm sorry, I should have made myself a little clearer," Damien said, waving a hand in front of his face. "Daniel never left Key West. In fact, he's still there right now, but he will be travelling to Davy in 2007, so that he could be there when you reach that city." "Why can't we just go to Key West and get him?" Gabby asked, frowning. "Have you ever been to Key West in real time?" Damien asked by way of reply. "No, never, but since we're travelling through time, why can't we just go there? That's what I'd like to know." "Don't insist, Gabby," Malou interposed. "I think I know what Damien means. We're travelling from our past to our future, but there's only one path to follow to do that. We're not supposed to deviate from that path, right?" She looked at Damien. "Thank you, Malou. That's what it amounts to, yes." Damien then switched his gaze to Damianos once again. "Please keep them safe," he said, before disappearing. "Look at them," Dan said to Chippewa as he and Gustavo noticed Malou, Stefano and Gabby with Damianos waiting in front of their home. "Why isn't Damianos letting them in our house?" "You know very well why he cannot do that, Dan, so why don't you tell me?" Chippewa retorted. "He's acting like a spoiled child again," he thought. "He wants to run before he can crawl. Guess there are some things that need to happen yet before they can go in, is that it?" Dan said, lowering his head. "Yes, Dan. Remember, if you please, that the year your daughter was born also marked the year when you tried to convince Domino's head office to adopt your order online program, isn't that correct?" Dan nodded. "Yeah, I guess I'm too anxious for my own good, aren't I?" Gustavo erupted in laughter. You could say that again, mate. I've never seen you so impatient to go anywhere." He turned to the Dreammaker. "About going anywhere, Chippewa, where are we sleeping tonight? I've just about had it. If you want to know the truth, hurling through time like we just did is a bit much for these old bones, you know that?" Chippewa joined in the laughter. "And when you have a chance to look in a mirror tonight, you'll notice the first grey hair appearing on your sideburns," he remarked. "Don't you dare say that, you old goat," Gustavo said, touching his temples. "It's too early for me to have grey hair, okay?" Dan had to smile. He too had noticed that Gustavo had aged a little since they left Key West. He wondered if he too was visibly growing older, but didn't say anything. Okay, Chippewa rejoined, still chuckling. "Why don't we find a nice hotel where we can spend a few days in relative peace?" "What do you mean by relative peace?" Dan asked, suddenly curious. "Well, since everything that happened between now and the time you returned to Florida occurred here, our little stopover will be interrupted a few times with events that you'll need to witness." "Oh, I see," Dan said. "Okay then, where do we go?" A few moments after Chippewa had snapped his fingers, Gustavo, Dan and the Dreammaker found themselves in the restaurant of the hotel where they were to stay for a while. "That's much better," Gustavo said as he relaxed in his chair. "How about I get a beer for everyone?" he asked, looking at Dan and Chippewa in turn. "That sounds like a good idea," Chippewa replied, taking his old hat off and depositing it on the seat next to him. "Same here," Dan rejoined, visibly trying to calm down. "And something to eat wouldn't go amiss either." "I'll get the waiter to come to the table," Gustavo said as he got up and made his way to the bar. Once the 3 bottles of beer were on the table and the server had come to take their order, Gustavo got up again and hurried to the washroom under Dan and Chippewa's amused gaze. "I bet he's going to check for grey hairs," Dan said to Chippewa, chuckling. "Oh yes, and I think he'll try plucking a few of them out too," Chippewa replied, taking a sip from his beer. They were right. As soon as Gustavo entered the washroom, he went to plant himself in front of the nearest mirror. He exhaled a sigh of annoyance when he noticed that Chippewa had been correct. There were a few grey hairs on either side of his face. "Let's say that you look distinguished now," a voice said from behind him. Gustavo practically pivoted on his heels in utmost surprise when he couldn't see anyone behind him in the mirror. Yet once he had turned around and had looked down, he exploded in laughter. "And who might you be?" he asked the diminutive man looking up at him. "The name's Lucido, Gustavo. Very pleased to make your acquaintance." "How do you know my name? Have we met before?" Gustavo frowned. "No, we have not, but I have seen you in Daniel's dreams." Lucido stopped, cocked his head to the side, and waited for Gustavo's reaction. Okay, Lucido, could you run that by me again? I am a bit tired tonight. So what are you saying? I'm saying that I've met Daniel in my travels and that he happens to think very highly of you. If you've met Daniel, that means you know where he is, doesn't it? Yes, Gustavo, I know where he is. You're absolutely correct. Gustavo shook his head as if an insect had just bit him. Okay, can we stop playing 20 questions and you tell me where he is, okay? In Key West. That doesn't help, Lucido, because the last time I checked, the boy had left the place in 1988, so where is he? Well, the last time you checked, he was still there, but the year wasn't 1988, although it was for you. It was 2006. You know what, Lucido? I think you should talk to his dad. Maybe he'll understand you better than I do. Lucido shook his head adamantly. No, I will not talk to his father. He's liable to leave you all in the middle of the night and go back to Key West to find his son. And you know as well as I do that he can't do that, don't you? I think I see what you mean. So just so I get it straight, Daniel is still in Key West, but in 2006, right? Yes, that's right, and you will find him in 2007 in Davie, Lucido said, grinning. But didn't you say he was in Key West in 2006? Why should we go to Davie in 2007 and find him then? Before Lucido could answer Gustavo's question, the door of the washroom opened and Dan walked in. Gustavo turned to the sink once again. He knew Lucido had disappeared the second the door had been pushed open. Hey, what's taking you so long? Dan asked. Are you pulling every grey hair from your head by any chance? No, I'm not, Gustavo replied. I heard someone say that a man looks distinguished when he's got grey hair, so I think I let nature take its course. Speaking of course, your meal is getting cold. Are you coming? Yeah, just give me a minute, Gustavo said, going into one of the stalls. I'll be right out. Dan shook his head and went back to the restaurant, still wondering what Gustavo had been doing all of this time.